Sometimes the reason that you're confusing two different vowel sounds, like an ah sound and an sound, has less to do with your mouth position and where you're putting your tongue or your lips, and more to do with placement. And so today I want to talk a little bit more about that. Good morning, good evening, afternoon, guys. Welcome to your daily American English pronunciation show, which is Wake Up American. We are here Monday through Friday, typically around 7 to 8 a.m., to make sure that you can get in your 5 to 10 minutes of practice for today. And to guide you in this process, there's me. Hello, my name is Jeff. Arise of breath. That's one of the 4 keys to a natural sound in American English: placement, pitch, breath. Trying to weaken your consonant sound, strengthen your vowel sounds. Talking about that first component. If you're not sure what placement is referring to basically the part of your body that you're using to project sounds. So to give like just some quick examples of placement, like for instance, if I talk like this is a very nasally placement. I'm talking through my nose. If I talk like this is like a placement by my lips. Versus now I'm talking at a more natural placement, which is closer to my chest area, which is around where my diaphragm is. You have an organ right beneath your lung. It's called your diaphragm. It's a pretty key component for trying to sound natural in American English, is using your diaphragm. Now, what we want to do with placement in general, this is not a rule, this is not something you're going to do all the time, but if you are talking and you're not sure what else to do, what I would recommend is trying to use a lower placement, trying to again project from closer to your diaphragm. But what a lot of students are doing is they're using placements that are closer to their first language than American English. A lot of other languages are projecting from a higher spot, maybe like around here, or maybe like around here, things like that, versus the lower American English one. And so, like, for instance, if you take like an ah sound, this is the ah like in stop or hot or lock, ah, ah, ah. But if you raise that placement really up, so instead of like an ah, 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 it might get like an ah, 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 or like kind of something like that. Similarly, there's a vowel that is very commonly confused with this called the schwa. The schwa sound is like this is a vowel that this is the sound people make when they're thinking, when they're not sure what they're going to say. They're like things like that, right? So people sometimes are confusing these vowels. Okay, and if you have the wrong placement, it can make it easier to do that. Because if I use a high placement like ah sound, and I use a high placement schwa sound like do you hear how those are really similar sounding now? So like ah, uh, ah, uh, versus if I use a more natural placement, that can start to separate the vowels a little bit more for my listener. So like ah, uh, ah, Okay, so this is where placement can be a big factor. Another situation where you can see that, for instance, with the E sound and the I sound. So American English has an E sound. Most likely, if you're watching this, your first language has an E sound as well. So like normally in American English sounds like E, E, but in your first language sound might sound something similar, more similar to like E, E, like E, E, or like things like that. And compare that to a sound that very few languages have, but English has, which is the short I, like eh. But if you raise the placement on that, that can suddenly turn into like eh. Do you hear that difference between like eh, er? And so this can start to cause some confusion with the E sound. So if I use a high placement E, like E, and a high placement like sound like it's like E, er, E, er. That is going to sound pretty similar to my listener, and that can cause some listening problems. Okay, so we want to make sure when we're projecting sounds in general using a low placement, or if you're studying sounds and you feel like you're having a hard time separating them, they sound too similar when you talk, and your listener is getting confused. It might not necessarily be a mouth position thing. It might actually be a placement thing. So trying to lower our placement project. This is going to be helpful. For instance, you guys know in a lot of videos, we get some help from Elsa, which is an app you can use for your pronunciation. In fact, you get some free access here. I think Elsa is a really helpful tool for like taking pronunciation tests to find where your weaknesses are. They also have exercises on minimal pairs like this. And the big thing is if you're taking like those minimal pair tests and you're like, man, I just can't get it right. I don't know why I'm getting it right. It might not be a mouth position thing. It might entirely be about placement. So just kind of think about the area where you're projecting from, and that may be able to help you out more. If you're curious about placement, I have a whole playlist. It's a 7 video series. Each video is like 2 minutes long, and it walks through all the basics for placement. So if you're curious about placement, you want more practice, then I encourage you to take a look at that placement series here.